The convent stood in an unsettling silence as the morning sun sliced through the stained glass windows of St. Augustine's Church. Outside, police swarmed the grounds, their radios crackling with tension. In the heart of the chaos, the lifeless body of Father Matthew, the revered 65-year-old priest, lay still in his private quarters. Whispers of shock and suspicion filled the air. Something dark had taken root in this sacred place. Blood stained his casket, and an ornate letter opener lay beside his body. An ornate letter opened her la beside his body. Sister Elena, a young doe-eyed nun of 24, sat trembling in the corner of the room, her habit disheveled. "I didn't mean to," she whispered repeatedly as detectives questioned her. The police were baffled. A nun confessing to a murder within the sacred grounds of a church was unprecedented. As the investigation began, fragments of their shared history emerged, and soon an unimaginable tale of passion, betrayal, and guilt unraveled. 3 years earlier, Elena had arrived at St. Augustine's convent, seeking refuge from a turbulent past. A product of foster homes and abandonment, she found solace in religion. Father Matthew, known for his charismatic sermons, immediately took notice of the young woman's devout nature. He welcomed her warmly, offering spiritual guidance and emotional support. Their relationship was initially innocent. Elena saw him as a father figure, and he admired her unwavering faith. But subtle gestures, a lingering gaze during prayer, an unnecessary touch on the shoulder, hinted at something deeper brewing beneath the surface. These small moments planted seeds of intrigue, though neither acknowledged the growing tension. As the weeks passed, their conversations grew more personal. Father Matthew shared stories of his youth, his struggles with faith, and his loneliness despite his holy vows. Elena, eager to, shared her fears, her dreams, and her doubts about her purpose. Their shared vulnerabilities created a bond, and soon their interactions became filled with unspoken words and stolen glances. During a garden walk one evening, Father Matthew complimented her beauty, calling her an angel sent by God. Elena blushed, dismissing it as harmless admiration, but that night she lay awake, replaying his words and questioning her feelings. Elena began to seek Father Matthew's presence more frequently, lingering after sermons or volunteering for tasks that required his guidance. Father Matthew II found reasons to involve Elena in church activities, subtly monopolizing her time. Their interactions became laden with teasing remarks and laughter, a stark contrast to the solemnity of their surroundings. During one confession session, Father Matthew confessed his struggles with celibacy, his voice thick with emotion. Elena, overcome by empathy, reached out to hold his hand. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the boundaries of their roles seemed to dissolve. The turning point came on a stormy evening when a power outage left the convent cloaked in darkness. Elena and Father Matthew found themselves alone in the candlelit library. As they sorted books by the flickering light, their hands brushed repeatedly, each touch lingering longer than the last. The tension became unbearable until Father Matthew leaned in and kissed her. It was brief, but electric, leaving both stunned and breathless. "Forgive me," he whispered, retreating hastily. Elena, her heart pounding, didn't stop him, but neither did she discourage him. That night marked the beginning of their secret descent. Despite their shared guilt, neither Father Matthew nor Elena could resist the pull of their forbidden attraction. A week after the kiss, they found themselves alone again, this time in Father Matthew's quarters. Their conversation, initially awkward and filled with denials, shifted into confessions of longing. Father Matthew spoke of the emptiness in his life that her presence had filled, While Elena admitted that she had never felt this alive, their embrace turned passionate, and vows of celibacy were broken that night. They agreed to keep their relationship secret, convincing themselves that their love was unique and misunderstood by the world. Elena and Father Matthew became masters of discretion, their secret affair hidden beneath the routines of convent life. Quick glances during Mass, coded notes slipped under doors, and midnight meetings became their norm. But as their passion deepened, so did their paranoia. They began to suspect the watchful eyes of Sister Margaret, the strict and perceptive Mother Superior. To deflect suspicion, Father Matthew intensified his spiritual duties, while Elena feigned an interest in taking her final vows. The thrill of their secrecy fueled their connection, but cracks in their facade began to show. Elena's youthful intensity soon turned possessive. She became jealous of Father Matthew's attention to other nuns, misinterpreting his kindness as flirtation. During one heated argument, she accused him of being unfaithful to her, forgetting his role as a priest. Father Matthew, torn between guilt and his feelings for Elena, struggled to reassure her without breaking their precarious balance. Their fights grew frequent, but each reconciliation only deepened their attachment. The toxicity of their relationship became evident, but they were too entangled to let go. The affair took a dangerous turn when Sister Margaret confronted Elena about her frequent absences during prayer hours. Cornard, Elena denied any wrongdoing, but the older nun's suspicion lingered. Panicked, Elena confided in Father Matthew, who dismissed her fears, believing they were too careful to be caught. But Sister Margaret's watchful presence began to haunt them, and they started making mistakes. An overheard conversation here, a misplaced note there. The walls of their sanctuary seemed to close in as their secret teetered on the edge of exposure. Overwhelmed by guilt and fear, Father Matthew suggested ending their relationship, proposing that Elena transferred to another convent. But Elena, deeply in love, refused. Instead, she proposed an alternative. They could leave the church together and start a new life far from prying eyes. Father Matthew, torn between his love for Elena and his lifelong commitment to the priesthood, hesitated. Their disagreement grew heated, but Elena's desperation finally persuaded him. They began making clandestine preparations, unaware of the tragic fate that awaited them. Unbeknownst to Elena and Father Matthew, Sister Margaret had begun to piece together their secret. After discovering a cryptic note in the church library, she covertly followed them, witnessing an intimate meeting in the chapel late at night. Horrified, Sister Margaret sought guidance from the bishop, who promised to investigate discreetly. Meanwhile, Elena and Father Matthew remained oblivious, focusing on their escape plan. Their bond grew more reckless, and their passion, now tinged with defiance, blinded them to the tightening noose around their illicit love. The bishop arrived at St. Augustine's under the pretense of a routine visit, but his private meeting with Father Matthew told a different story. He confronted the priest with accusations, leaving him with two options: confess and face the consequences, or resign quietly and disappear. Father Matthew was shaken, realizing their affair was no longer a secret. When he told Elena, she was devastated, but refused to let their love end. She urged him to leave with her immediately, but Father Matthew, gripped by guilt and indecision, asked for more time. This hesitation planted seeds of resentment in Elle's heart. Elena felt betrayed by Father Matthew's reluctance to choose her over the church. Her once unwavering devotion to him began to sour. She accused him of using her and abandoning her when their love was most vulnerable. Father Matthew, overwhelmed by the collapse of his carefully constructed life, lashed out, blaming her for tempting him away from his sacred vows. Their arguments escalated, each exchange chipping away at the love they once shared. Despite their anger, the fear of losing each other kept them tethered in a toxic spiral. Elena's love for Father Matthew transformed into an obsession. She began tracking his movements, convinced he was planning to leave her behind. One evening, she found him speaking privately with Sister Margaret and misinterpreted their conversation as a betrayal. Consumed by rage, Elena confronted Father Matthew, accusing him of conspiring against her. He denied it, but his evasiveness only fueled her paranoia. The cracks in their relationship widened, and Elena, once sweet and innocent, now seemed unpredictable and volatile. The night before Father Matthew was to deliver his resignation, he invited Elena to his quarters for one last conversation. He told her he had decided to leave the priesthood, but needed time to reconcile with his faith. Elena, desperate and emotionally unhinged, refused to accept his plan. Their argument spiraled out of control, with Elena accusing him of abandoning her after she had sacrificed everything. In the heat of the moment, she grabbed the ornate letter opener from his desk, threatening to hurt herself if he left her. Father Matthew, trying to calm her, moved closer, and in the struggle that followed, the blade struck him. As Father Matthew collapsed, blood pooling beneath him, Elena froze in shock. The weight of what she had done hit her all at once. She dropped the letter opener and cradled his lifeless body, sobbing uncontrollably. The sanctity of the room, once a refuge for their forbidden love, now bore witness to the ultimate tragedy. Hours passed before Sister Margaret, alarmed by the lack of response from Father Matthew's quarters, discovered the scene. Elena, still clutching his body, whispered repeatedly, "I didn't mean to." The sanctity of the church had been shattered, leaving Sister Margaret to call the authorities. Detectives arrived at the convent, struggling to reconcile the scene with its holy setting. Elena, dazed and incoherent, confessed to the killing, but her fragmented story left many questions unanswered. Sister Margaret, though shocked, provided her observations, revealing the affair to the investigators. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, the tale of passion and betrayal emerged. The police discovered letters, hidden notes, and other incriminating evidence that painted a picture of a love that had spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, the church sought to manage the scandal, desperate to protect its reputation. During her interrogation, Eleanor recounted her relationship with Father Matthew, from its innocent beginnings to the fateful night of his death. Her voice wavered as she described their love, justifying it as a bond misunderstood by others. She admitted to the murder, but insisted it was an accident, claiming she only wanted him to stay. The detectives, though sympathetic to her turmoil, remained firm in their duty. Elena's account, filled with both remorse and a haunting love for Father Matthew, left the investigators wrestling with the line between crime and tragedy. Elena's trial drew widespread attention, with the media sensationalizing the scandal. The prosecution portrayed her as a manipulative seductress who led a man of faith astray, while the defense argued that she was a troubled young woman consumed by a love she couldn't control. Testimonies from Sister Margaret and others painted a complex picture of their relationship, blurring the lines of victim and perpetrator. The trial revealed not only the crime, but also the hypocrisy and human frailty within the church, leaving the jury to decide Elena's fate amidst a storm of public opinion. Elena was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. As she sat in her cell, she reflected on the choices that led to her downfall. Despite the tragedy, she held on to the memory of Father Matthew, believing their love, however flawed, was real. The church, tarnished by the scandal, implemented stricter protocols to prevent such relationships in the future. For Elena, the path to redemption was long and arduous, but in her solitude, she found solace in the belief that love, no matter how forbidden, was worth the pain it brought. Thank you for being with me until the end of the video. Your support encourages us to produce better and more interesting content for you. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with the videos we publish every day. Thanks.